Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about the Viseart palette called the Cashmerie palette. This is in the ÉTENDU series and I thought the colors were so perfect for the season and especially going into winter a little bit later that I wanted to dedicate a video to it. I did the same thing when the spring or summer palette released. In April, I think. I called it the embodiment of summer and I feel like this is the embodiment of fall for me. I really like the warm tones associated with the leaves, but the leaves are only colored for a short period of time. Most of fall and winter the trees are actually empty. So for my point of view, fall and winter are more associated with cool toned colors. So I still have mine in the packaging. I really like the way Viseart shows the shades on the back. So this is the shades. These are the shades I mean. And the information. So as you can see, Viseart ran with the whole fall theme. And they made the packaging with leaves and blooms and I don't know, sort of Christmassy colors, I think. And this is what the palette looks like. You have these more purpley cool tones and you have these more brown cool and neutral tones. So I feel like this makes a very interesting color story. For today my plan is to do one look and maybe I'll do another look in the future, but I want to do one because I feel like this palette isn't all about the getting inspired or doing very intricate different kinds of looks. It's really just good at doing one thing and that's what I want to show you. I'll also do some swatches and I'll tell you my thoughts in the end. So before we get started, if you're new here, I want to thank you so much for clicking on my video. My name is Cecile, I live in the Netherlands, I'm 28 years old and I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. I'm slowly growing my little YouTube family and I really do notice everyone, so it would mean a lot to me and otherwise just enjoy the video. So let's just get straight into no wait, let's do the swatches first. I wanted to go straight into the demo, but no. I am wearing, oh no, it's working. I stretched them out a little bit. My sleeves are very tight. I'll swatch them from left to right, top to bottom. So this is the top row. I'll swatch them like this. Wow, that shade is pretty much invisible. You can see it slightly over there. That's the matte. The others are all satin or shimmer shades. Beautiful. The mattes are really creamy and nicely pigmented. You can see it on my finger. They really pack quite a punch. And the shimmers or the metallics are smooth and thin. So I think if you have texture on your eyes, they work very well, but they do sparkle a lot. I do feel these are a little bit less sparkly than the palette I showed you in the springtime, the Soleil La Plage. But that's okay. They're still beautiful. And finally, ooh, that's a pretty one. So I'm going over a few times as you can see, but I'm not adding any second layers. And this is what the palette looks like swatched. Let me see if yes, there are shade names. So from top to bottom, the shade names are Bubbles, Laughter, Feather, Pearls, Burlesque, Flapper, Bootlegger, Jazz, Roaring, 20s, Retro and Cigar. So as you can imagine from the shade names, this is a very vintage inspired palette. I see the Roaring 20s and Jazz and Bubbles, and I think this is supposed to be a holiday palette but in sort of retro theme, which makes sense because this side of the palette, the right side, actually reminds me a lot of the new Natasha Denona retro palette, which also has these mauvey, purpley, but muted shades. So apparently that is something people associate with the retro vibe. I'll show you the swatches one more time next to the palette, because I got some requests to show things for a longer period of time. Yes, like this. So I'll move my arm a little bit. You can see how nice and shiny they are. So I cleaned up my arm and so far I really like this color story. I feel like it'll go with pretty much anything, for me at least. I don't really wear a lot of warm toned clothes. So for me a cool toned palette really ticks all the boxes, and I really was in need for a cool toned palette. So I guess you could do a similar thing to this side of the palette with, for instance, the Soft Glam palette. But that one is a little bit warmer, I think. So I feel like this one is unique. And it is in a nice Viseart formula. And so far the shades seem to be all performing very well. So that's no reason for hesitation. A couple of quick details about this palette. It retails for €39.95. I'm not sure what the dollar price is. It might be a little bit more, I think 44. I got mine through Boozy Shop, which is a Dutch wholesale company. And I think it's also available on Beauty Bay, if you're from around here. But of course you now pay taxes from England. But I think they may... No, let me take that back. I think Angelica Nyquist said that she never had to pay taxes because it was already included in the shipping fee. But don't quote me on that. Anyway, it's for a 12-pan palette, it's not bad. And I just want to mention that these shades, they're all in between the large shades and the tiny shades. So they have these petite palettes with the tiny little shades. I think they're 1 gram each. That's not that tiny, but they are smaller. And they have their usual larger size, the old size, which was 2 grams, I think, per shade. And now they're sort of in between. And these shades are magnetic, so you can interchange them between palettes of the same size. So all the Étendu palettes have this size, and I think the new Viseart Pro, the Grande Pro palettes also have this size. So I think this is just the new standard size, but I just wanted to mention that. And then quickly, it also has a mirror. So I think all the rambling is now complete and I will go into the demo. So I zoomed you in a little bit, and I think I want to use a primer that really makes the pigment pop. Because these shadows blend out pretty easily, so I don't feel like I need a very smooth primer like the Anastasia one. Therefore I'm going to go with my new favorite, which is the Glam Light Icing Primer. I have mine in the shade Classic Vanilla, and I'll apply just a teeny tiny bit on both eyelids. I'm really not using much at all. You don't need much of this primer. You can, but it'll crease. So immediately my thoughts when seeing this palette is that there aren't a lot of really dark shades. They're mostly mid-toned. So you do have this very dark matte, which is good. And you have this pretty dark shimmer, but you don't have a dark brown toned shimmer. And you don't have a really dark, well, I guess you have this one, but you don't have a really dark purple toned matte. So that could be something lacking. I do think it's going light enough. I think these two shades are definitely light enough. I think that's something Viseart does well often. So for now, I think I want to go into this mid-toned purple shade. I have this fluffy brush. This is the tapered blender brush by the Boozy Shop home brand. There is quite a bit of kick up, but I wasn't really careful. So I'm going to put this in my crease. See how easily they blend? It got a little bit of fallout, but like I said, I had quite a bit on my brush. Just going to build that up. This shade actually reminds me a lot of the Pat McGrath Divine Rose palette. I'm not sure what the shade is called. Valoria, I think. It's this muted, grayish purple. Really beautiful. So you can easily blend out one layer, like I'm doing right now. So this is one layer and this is built up to two. That's wonderful. So maybe it doesn't lack a dark purple shade. Maybe this is dark enough. And just gently swiping left to right, make sure there's no patchiness at all. Yeah, that works. There's actually not a lot of mattes in this palette. There are only 4 mattes and 8 metallics or shimmer shades. So I am going to take this cream colored shade to blend out the purple. See, I would have liked a light pink shade in a matte formula to blend this out. I guess you don't really need a blending out shade, but I would have liked a more pinky toned one. Then you could have made a beautiful all matte look with the pink on the lid. But this blends out beautifully. I've now used 2 matte shades. Now I'm switching to a small tapered pointy brush. This is called the pencil brush, but it is a little bit longer. And I'm going into the dark shade. This is a very dark, cool tone brown. And I'm going to put this in the outer corner. And also lower through the crease. And as you can see, it's pretty pigmented. It does darken up quite a bit because of this shade. But I do like, oh, that was my mistake. I do like you can use this darker brown shade in combination with the purple. It does shift a little bit. So I barely have anything left on my brush. And this is how intense it gets. So that's good. Sometimes with these types of shades, they don't go on as dark as you would like them to. This one actually goes a little bit deeper than they appear in the pen. And I'm also taking this shade in the outer corner of the lower lash line, connecting it to the upper lid. So I'm cleaning up the brush with my color switch in between. So now I feel like I need to go back with the purple just a little bit. So I'm taking that purple shade again and I'm just going over the edge. And this blends so beautiful. Really effortless. And I must say, now that I've tapped off the upper layer, it does have a lot less kick up in the pen. And I'm also going to take a little bit of that and smoke out the lower lash line. So I think that's it for the mattes. I think this is starting to look really good. They just blend so easily. I'm taking my cleaned pencil brush, which I just used, and now I'm going into a nice shimmer. And I think I want to take this one over here and put this on the inner side of the lower lash line. Put it right on my contact lens. Now that I'm thinking about it, cashmere is really the appropriate name for these shades. It's not only the color, but these shades are just so soft. It's like any Viseart palette is a cashmere palette. By the way, this was a mini collection. There's also a Viseart palette, which has some bright colors, which I would usually prefer. But it had a couple of warm toned shades that I wasn't really enthusiastic for. So I added that shade and it gives this nice subtle sheen. I'm cleaning up that brush and I'm going into the light metallic purple. And I'm going to put that in the inner corner. That's nice. Palettes often lack a deep shade or a light enough inner corner shade. And I'm okay with that. I've grown used to it really. But it's nice to see a palette that actually almost has it all. Also taking this underneath the tear duct. And I'm also taking it right here next to the nose. Now it's time to add the lid shades, and I honestly feel like keeping it a little bit more purple today, just because I feel like those shades will go nicely together. So I'm first going into this deeper eggplant shade with a thin flat shader brush, and I'm going to put this on the outer half of my lid. I love how deep that is. By the way, if you are interested in seeing that other palette, Morgan Turner did a review on both of them, which was what inspired me to buy this one. So, yeah, she did a more brownish look, I think. Now I'm going into this shade again, which is what I used for the lower lash line. Going to put that on the front side of the lid. By the way, now that I think about it, this palette kind of resembles the new Dior quints, the ones for holiday. They have a more cool toned one and a more neutral, slightly warm one. And I think you could get a very similar look with this palette. So I cleaned up the fallout, and this is what the look looks like so far. I think this is beautiful, but I have to say the metallics or satins are really satins in this palette, so far as I've tested them, and I could also see that in the swatches. So there are no really sparkly shades like there were in the Soleil La Plage palette from this summer. It's a different vibe. I like this as well. I think this is a beautiful everyday palette, and I do like the fact it can go very deep and very light. So I think it's still very versatile, and there's this whole brown section that I haven't even touched today. So I think you can do plenty with this palette, but I just wanted to address that. You're not going to get very sparkly shades with this palette. It's more sophisticated than that. So now let me add some liner, mascara, the rest of my makeup, and I'll come back to share my final thoughts. I'm back. This is the finished look. I paired it with the Secret Selma lipstick by Charlotte Tilbury. I thought that was pretty. And I kept the cheek products pretty cool toned as well. And I think it makes for a pretty dramatic look. I think this is a beautiful palette. I think it's pretty versatile, and I think you can have a lot of fun with it, but still keep it pretty safe. So for those of you who really want to be daring with any eyeshadow look that you do, this might be a little bit too boring. But for those of you who want to venture out a little bit, maybe do a little bit darker, shinier eyeshadow looks, this could be perfect. And for those of you like me who like a little bit of everything, I think you will really like this one as well. The quality is top notch. The mattes are really buildable and dark, but they also blend out very easily. The shimmers are very nice and soft, but they do lack a little bit of sparkle. So that's my one complaint, and I would like there to be a light colored purple shade, so like a light pink or something. That's something that's a little bit lacking in my opinion. But I really like the look that came out of it, and I'm sure the other looks will turn out beautiful as well. So yeah, that's all I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.